Okay, so let me tell you, I'm making this YouTube video because I was doing Instagram Live and the audio was like crazy. So now I have to redo it and I'm going to do it on YouTube this time. Okay, so mind you, it's kind of late here. So I wanted to say this and I'm going to try to say it the best way I can. Hopefully I can hit all the points that I had said on Instagram. So it really started off with me doing a TikTok. I did a TikTok dancing to a song with profanity. And the funny thing is, I usually don't listen to music with profanity, but this one just got my got my goat. Could I say that? And the point that I'm trying to make is that people oftentimes on the internet post things, and the people who watch it want to make assumptions on a person based on those little bits of pieces of information that they see of that person on the internet. And something I kind of coined up on the Instagram Live I just did was that someone becomes an object of imagination. So you see a couple of tidbits of information about a person on the internet, and then your imagination just goes off with it. It thinks that, it creates its own reality. And so I've done this. And what I'm trying to get at is that a lot of times in the past, I dealt with trying to fit into people's perception of me. I tried to be what people wanted me to be. I wanted to be a good girl. This happened, and let me just break down what happened. This happened when I was in high school. About my first year, so I was like 13 or 14 years old. I went through this period where I was very self-critical, and I was always trying to win people's affection and win people's love. And it was because I felt, for some reason, I felt unloved. And that was a lie. And I felt like I even had to earn God's love. And so I went through this season where I felt very rejected and unloved. And I thought that I was a failure, even though I was only 13 and, I hadn't even started life. But it was a lot of things that I was going through at the time, a lot of family drama and trauma that I was dealing with. And, even people who were trying to help me, I was rejecting it because I would only hear what I wanted to hear and believe what I wanted to believe. And it was a really dark season for me. And it took God delivering a message to me from a preacher, random preacher on the television. And his message was to not focus on yourself, on your flaws, on your own imperfection, but to know that God is perfect and his love is perfect, and that's all you need. And when I heard that message, it didn't immediately sink in. It took time. It took months for me to really absorb that message. And gradually, I began to understand that it is not about what I do. I don't have to be perfect. It's about how God covers me in His grace, how He loves me in spite of me, how He sees my faults and He still chooses to love me. And so after that experience, being like around 14, and after hearing that message, my life really began to change, because prior to that, I really was always trying to be perfect and trying to be good in everyone's eyes. And that's the thing is, when you are trying to fit into everyone's mode, you lose who you are and you're not being authentic. And God didn't create us to be, let's say like this, He didn't create us to be puppets to every person that we meet. He didn't create us to lose our identity. He wants us to be who we are as a whole person. And one thing I just learned was that everybody in the Bible is imperfect. They are imperfect people trying to find God. They all fell short, but God covered their sins. And I said, wow, God used them despite of their weaknesses and their imperfections. And so what I want, basically that ties into the thing I was saying earlier, was that I did something by posting a video on TikTok that was out of the norm of what people would assume about me. And then that leads to criticism, right? And then all of a sudden people say, well, how can you listen to that and then talk about the Bible? Well, one thing I want to say is that I'm a person. I'm a human being. And one day I'm going to be like this, and another day I'm going to be like that. One day I might be good. Another day I might do something is a little off. You may be wrong. The point I'm trying to say is that despite what we do every day, is God's love and grace that carries us. Tying back again to my experience as a young teenager, I thought when I had done something wrong that God didn't love me. And that really messed me up for a little while. And so what I'm trying to connect to right now is that oftentimes we judge people because they do something that is not the norm, or we can't understand them. We immediately criticize and judge them instead of using discernment. And instead of, maybe if you know they're doing something wrong, trying to guide them in a way that is respectful and not throwing it in their face that they're wrong. Because God doesn't do us like that. God sees us in our sin when we are doing something wrong, and He loves us back to Him. He gives us grace, and He helps us while we are in that sin, and that brings us back home. But people, when we see someone doing something wrong, we immediately judge them, and that only pushes them farther away from help and farther away from God. So I want to connect this to a scripture where there was a sinner, and I guess you would say he's supposedly a God-fearing man or a religious man. The sinner says to God in secret, God, forgive me because I have done wrong. Help me. Have mercy on me. The other man lives a seemingly perfect life. He does all the things that looks right. He feeds the poor. He does this. He's always at church. Da, da, da. And he is proud of himself. And he thinks that he is righteous when he's really self-righteous. He really is about personifying an image. And his relationship with God is not really there. It's really that he's just personifying that he is a good person. And so the point I'm trying to say is we should not judge people based on how things appear. We shouldn't take things for face value. So don't judge people. When you see them and they're doing something wrong, pray for them. Love them. Have compassion for them. Don't judge them. Don't criticize them. There's constructive criticism, and we have to ask God for guidance on how to do that. How to say what you need to say to help them. But we oftentimes attack rather than constructively criticizing. And I was one of those people who attacked. Also, during high school, I had the tendency to think that a person who's having a hard time was kind of like causing me problems. And I really was making them an scapegoat. And I didn't see that they were dealing with their own issues the best they could. Instead, I began to put the blame on them for certain things that were going on in my life. And instead of being compassionate and loving, I was judgmental and inconsiderate. And so if there's one thing that you can learn from me, is that if you want to help a person, and if you want to, I think really honestly this is something that Christ models himself. You have to give love even when it is not, can I say this, is not returned to you. And I believe that God will give us discernment as to how and when to do this. You know, there's a time and place for everything. So sometimes a person may need this word. God will, reveal it to you how to say it. And in other times, there are situations where you need to let God deal with that person. And your words may not reach them. They may not be able to, because when a person is in their own head, it's like they cannot sometimes grasp what another person is trying to say to them. It's like you hear what you want to hear and you believe what you want to believe. I know this because I was that person. There were people trying to help me and I didn't hear them. I ignored everything they said because I was stubborn and I wanted to do things my way. And I found out my way was wrong. And they couldn't convince me otherwise. I had to learn it. So sometimes there's a person who needs help and you're speaking to them is not really going to reach them. You have to pray on it. You have to pray on it. And you have to love that person. So one thing I wanted to add that kind of relates to this as well is that yesterday I had a little situation. I'm not going to go into details because then I'll be making a long video. But I got in my feelings and I got emotional because I was angry about something that happened. And I really wanted to tell this other person, I wanted to give them a piece of my mind. And I couldn't. I'm not the kind of person who can really just argue or yell at someone. When I'm upset, I just really prefer not to talk. And that's not good either. But so I was upset and I just held my peace, but I was still upset. And then it really just came across my heart that this is a time to exercise or do as Christ would do. And Christ took up the cross and he had to endure pain and suffering for my redemption, for everyone's redemption. And he didn't have to do that, but he was doing God's will for his life. So what I'm trying to say is that when we experience times where people are doing something that annoys or angers us, and I'm particularly talking about people who we know, family and friends, because I believe there's another way to deal with people who you don't know. That's where I feel like you have to have more discernment to know when to just pray for a person, when to that's something that I really feel like you have to seek God on how to deal with each kind of situation. But I do feel that this is what came across my heart yesterday, was that we have to take up our cross and love even when it hurts. Love someone even when it hurts. Not all of a sudden become so angry that you do something out of anger. So that's basically what I wanted to share. And I hope that if there's anything you can get out of it, that you understand that God's love is infinite, and that if anyone tells you otherwise, that God doesn't love you, it's a lie, because God is love. And his mercy endures forever. His grace is wonderful. So yes, I think that's pretty much what I wanted to say. Oh, one more thing. I was having a discussion and Job came up. And in the Bible, if you know, Job was a man who lost everything. And basically, by the end of the book of Job, Job is praying for his friends. And Job is the one who has the problem. But he ends up praying for his friends, trying to help them out. And when Job does that, that's when God blesses him and restores everything twofold. He had double what he lost. So the point I want to connect with that is that is like the love, the Christ-like love that was exercised in Job. Here is Job suffering, and he goes and prays for his friends, because his friends, who were supposed to be helping him, they started to add more confusion to the situation, because they start saying to Job, oh, did you do something wrong that caused God to punish you? And that's the thing, again, where people want to make a judgment on you and they don't know the whole story. You know, they're ready to just immediately make an assumption and criticize you and condemn you, as in Job's friends. But Job ended up praying for them, you know? So, yes. So I'm going to leave it at that. I hope this, I hope what I shared was helpful. And it's getting late here, so I'm going to end it. But soon I will be posting another video, a travel vlog or a travel video. Okay, so stay tuned. Okay, thank you for watching. Okay, please comment, like, subscribe. Okay, until next time, peace.